You're welcome to Business Highlights on Trust TV. I am your host, Chamun Dabeng. Take a walk with me as we highlight business events that happened over the week. So let's take a sneak peek at what's been happening in the business and economic world. If you recall, on June 4th, 2021, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari announced the indefinite suspension of Twitter after the social media platform deleted one of his tweets and temporarily suspended the president's account. On October 1st, being the Nigerian Independence Day, President Muhammadu Buhari gave hope to millions of users that the platform would be reinstated the moment the company met their conditions. However, this is about 64 days later, and Twitter in Nigeria is still banned. Even though on November 28th, the Minister of State for Labor and Employment, Festus Keyamo, had said that Twitter has agreed to all the conditions for the suspension to be lifted. According to the President of National Association Telecom Subscribers of Nigeria, NACOM's Chief Diolu Ogunbanjo, just 100 days after the ban took effect, many small businesses had collapsed, and with many small businesses reporting losses up to the millions. Social media platform isn't just a place for chit-chat and catching up with old friends anymore. It has become a place of business to many Nigerians, and this has resulted to Nigeria's $12 billion e-commerce market taking a serious hit. NetBlocks, a watchdog organization that monitors cybersecurity and governance of the internet, says that each hour the suspension costs Nigeria $250,000. That's 102.5 million naira, bringing the daily loss to 2.46 billion. Invariably, it means in the last 6 months of the ban, the economy might have lost about 447 billion naira to the suspension. There are approximately 40 million Nigerians who are active users on the social media platform, and this sparked a conversation amongst Nigerian Twitter users and international bodies, most of them expressing outrage. Now let's move on to Nigeria's manufacturing sector. In 2020, Nigeria's manufacturing sector suffered a huge loss due to the pandemic. In 2021, it had attempted a recovery, slowly picking itself back up by Q3 of 2021. The manufacturing sector already has to face poor infrastructure, inflation, heavy taxes, and much more. And with fuel subsidy removal and electricity subsidy removal knocking hard on Nigeria's door, it raises fears that it could take the manufacturing sector 10 paces back. On Business Daily, hosted by yours truly, I spoke to financial analyst and economist Steve Nwachukwu, and here's what he had to say on the matter.
Struggling in the sense that most things that is really meditating against the growth of manufacturing, I think also has to do with inconsistency in government policy decisions. And if actually the government has focused in this area to actually lift up the manufacturers, what are the issues? What are these things meditating against manufacturers in Nigeria? We have the issue most, if you ask me, one, second and third is infrastructural deficits. When we talk about infrastructural deficit, we're talking about those social amenities, those infrastructures that will aid manufacturers. They are all lacking, from the electricity that they need on daily basis to produce, the poor roads, the distribution channels, the marketplaces. Those infrastructures are all lacking, and it's actually have been impacted. As government improve in this area, I said no, because most of these infrastructures has been also produced or been provided by the same manufacturer. So the manufacturers in Nigeria are more like they are providing for themselves. They're also providing to aid their businesses. So those very enabling environment to work, which is what the government has to do. Government shouldn't be in business, yes, but government should provide that enabling environment, that seamless environment, that very open economy that manufacturers and businesses can strive.
All right, so now you've talked about infrastructure. Now, where does this whole Forex crisis that we're currently having come into play? Because we focus a lot on oil, and one of the reasons why we're having this issue is because oil is also struggling itself. So how does this now, even with the policies or with the change or better infrastructure, if we're consistently depending on oil, does it really fix things for us in that sector?
It does not at all. That's why we continue to encourage the government to diversify, open up the economy. You open up the economy only when you provide these social amenities, you provide these infrastructures that will drive businesses. ease of doing business. We'll continue to preach it every day. What is the percentage? What is the level of Nigeria in ease of doing business? If I import a machine for my factory or raw material for my factory, how long does it take for the clearing agents to solve what you suffer from the port? What's the great luck we are having from just a Papa port to move goods or machines or raw materials needed for the factory? This is the areas we are speaking of, because we need government to step up the business. If you don't step up this business, you cannot have an ease of doing business when you got your goods or materials locked up in the port. Then issue of the forest you talked about. Yes, this multiplicity of forest exchange, you have one for importing crude oil, you have one for the raw materials, you have several windows available where these very manufacturers are being frustrated, and they will end up in the parallel market, the street market, to buy currently at about 540 or 545 and thereabout, while the CBN import and export window is around 410, 415 or 413. So which way are we saying that is the best for the manufacturer? Is it to go and source it from that parallel market, that open market, where it easily available? That's why that is a dilemma. The ones at the parallel market is very easily available. You can walk to any of the street of any of these malams or whosoever in their business of the bureau de change in the streets. You can easily access this forest from them than to access those very official rate, which is the export and import window, S&E window, I&E window, which is one provided by the central bank. You hardly can have access to forest from that very channel. So this is a challenge. The government has to widen this very window. Even the disparity, the range between that 540 to 415 or 414 or whatever it may be, is still so wide that the government has to make sure you widen. Let there be the kind of convergence of these very rates. Even if it's not going to be 540 or 5, let it be something within 540, 550, 560 maximum, where you have the official rate at 450 or 430. Not to have the parallel market, which, remember, the anchor point here is that the parallel market is easily available. You can get, if you need $1 billion today, you get it at the parallel market. But if you need it in the official market, you hardly will get it.
Yeah, it's a little harder in that area.
Close that gap between that parallel market and the official market.
All right, so for my final question today, subsidy removal from both fuel and electricity is coming 2022. Now, that is two things that a lot of Nigerians have, should I say, benefited from, that's going to be taken away. And of course, this is definitely going to affect the manufacturing and production costs of products. Now, what does this mean for that particular sector and also for businesses and the final consumer?
Well, I think all of them, both the consumer, the manufacturers, and even the businesses, going to be affected by that positively. But the cons are more than the pros. The advantages of what we'll gain from the subsidy removal is more biting than what we'll gain from it, in the sense that, one, if you remove subsidy, it's going to drive the cost of living, cost of production high. And have in mind, this is what the same manufacturers are already suffering, the cost of production, because their prices or the goods they produce is not competitive enough because of the high cost of their goods. A particular product you produce here in Nigeria and the one imported from China or imported from Indonesia or imported from Singapore is much, much cheaper than what you produce here, because the cost of doing business in Nigeria is quite high. Only to the fact of the environment is high. If you add the removal of subsidy from fuel, it's going to drive cost of doing business, cost of manpower is there, because what you have to pay your staff that runs those machines, they have to double or triple itself. It's going to also affect in the final product. So it's going to affect the manufacturer. It's also going to affect the consumers, because whatever input, whatever manufacturer puts in from the cost or rising cost of cost materials or rising cost of staff salary or rising cost of distribution channels is going to throw it back to the consumer. So definitely both the manufacturer is going to suffer it, the consumers are also going to suffer it.
The survival of the manufacturing sector in Nigeria is very important to the nation's economy. The growth of the sector is dependent on the environment the government creates. We'll take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to move on to our next story. You're welcome back to Business Highlights on Trust TV. Once again, I am Chamon Dabeng. Let's talk Omicron. The oil industry is seeing one of its biggest monthly losses this year due to the arrival of the Omicron COVID-19 variant. Since its appearance, oil prices have struggled below $70 per barrel. Apart from its effects in the oil sector, the Omicron variant has also become a threat to air transportation, as countries like Europe have been forced to impose a series of restrictions, mainly on African countries. According to the International Air Transport Association, this act was against the advice of the World Health Organization, WHO. The IATA, which represents about 290 airlines comprising 83% of global air traffic, have reported a recovery in air travel. The improvement continued in October 2021 with broad-based improvements in both domestic and international markets. However, the IATA said that this would pose a threat to the sector's recovery. Many of you may ask, how does this affect Nigeria? Well, a drop in oil prices will take a toll on Nigeria's revenue position, which will then impact budget implementation and the economic recovery process. A restricted travel situation will lead to an economic contraction that was experienced during the lockdowns in 2020. However, it is unlikely that there would be a total lockdown like in 2020 due to the mass vaccinations carried out, thereby reducing the blow of Omicron, making it less devastating. All right, so let's move on to our next story, electricity. The issue of a lack of constant electricity in Nigeria is not something that is hidden. The whole nation faces the problem. About 47% of Nigerians do not have access to grid electricity, and those who do have access face regular power cuts. According to the World Bank, Nigeria loses $26.2 billion annually, which is the equivalent of 2% of its gross domestic product, due to the lack of reliable electricity. The lack of reliable power has stifled economic activity and private investment and job creation. To bridge the gap between supply and demand, many Nigerians are forced to generate power in small units from off-grid sources, usually fossil fuel powered generators. Along with health and environmental costs, there are financial costs of generators incurred. Chijoke Okafor went to Utako Market to speak to some traders, and here is an expert of that conversation.
Initially, we are using AEDC. But now we are using Gen. So that is just for now. It's Gen I'm using for now. It's a long protocol. Like by this time last year, there was a form that was distributed for us to have NEPA lights. So after distribution of the form, filling form, up to now we have not heard anything from the AEDC, but we keep on consuming the Gen. So we don't know if it's a politics between the Gen distributor guy and the NEPA, but by now we're supposed to have gotten lights. You'll be using our standard AEDC. Also, we don't know what is still going on, so that is just it for now. There was this rumor we heard that the people that collect money for the NEPA, they are not remitting it to AEDC. So and there was a story again that came up that the guy distributing the Gen is liaising with the AEDC. So a lot of story, but for now, for the past 2 years or thereabout, we have not had any NEPA here. So it's only the Gen guy we have become, and it's too expensive. Every day you consume, pay 300 naira. So check it for 30 days or 20 something days in a month. So it goes a long way. But what we will do, we don't know where to run to, who needs to follow, who needs to run to. So, but for now, we don't have option that, but we need lights. So that's why we have been using the lights, the NEPA light for all this while.
Not now, but once used it. Some, let's say, last 3 years back. Actually, at that time, they said because of the shop they were building at the park, that we should wait. When they are done with the building, they will bring back the light. And already, we don't even know when they took the transformer we are using then. And that was how someone brought his personal gen. And since we don't have option, many of us joined the man. And which after connection, he was once collecting 150, from 150 to 200, from 200 to 300. And since then, it has not been easy. Because we've approached AEDs severally, and they said that they are coming, of which they gave us forms, which we filled last year. And they said latest before this year, and they will bring the transformer back and reconnect the ADC light back. But till now, I remember myself met the person that brought the form. It was like he has done the best he can do. I said, what do you mean? He said he cannot do more than we've just seen him by giving us forms as it is now that is in the hand of the AEDC officials. So we actually need them. Because as you can see, if this light, if I may say, yesterday around 2:33, the man took off the gen. Everybody started a little, I passed my neighbor generator, and noise was everywhere, smoke everywhere. So it's not helping. We are tired of everyday 300 naira.
Now, the disparity in the availability of electricity in some parts of the country is glaring. Some areas experience near constant electricity, while others can only pray for some hours. To explain why this happened, here is the GM Corporate Communications, AEDC Oyebode Fadipe.
Now, let's look at it from this perspective. From the perspective that you have drawn the question, it's a little bit dangerous. Dangerous in the sense that because it does not represent the entire picture. Now, look at it from the perspective of the discos themselves. The current billing structure or the current tariff structure is such that all customers are classified into Band A, Band B, Band C, Band D, and Band E. Now, Band A are those who receive energy for 16 hours and above. And Band B are those who receive from 12 hours but not up to 16 hours. Band D are those who receive 8 hours but not up to 12 hours, and gradually like that. So your Band A could be Papi, and your Band B could be somebody who is even living in Maitama, depending on the feeder. So it depends on the amount of energy. It's not necessarily by social stratification, but by feeder. Again, or put in another form, it's not necessarily a function of the geography of the customer. In other words, the area where the customer is living. No, it's not necessarily because of that, but rather in the classification that has been done, which is what is currently being operated, customers are put in different bands. So if you live in Papi, for instance, and your band is Band A, you will enjoy energy for 16 hours and above. I mean, I think the first one is about 20 hours and above, and then the other one is 16 hours and above, but not up to 20 hours. And then the third one is 12 hours and above, but not up to 16 hours. And then the fourth one is 8 hours and above. And then the other one is 8 hours and below. Okay, so there are 5 bands. You have 20 hours and above. You have 16 hours and above. You have 12 hours and above. You have 8 hours and above. And then you have below 8 hours. Now, the drive, essentially, and again, it's important that we emphasize this point. The drive is that we're looking forward to the time when no customer will get less than 8 hours of energy at any point in time in a day. Okay, so customers should not look at it from the perspective of, oh, it's because I live in a certain geography. That's why I am confined to these hours of availability. No, it's basically the availability on the feeder. Because, again, we have customers who are on the Type 3 kV network, and they are not in the so-called urban area. They are in the rural area, and they get up to 24 hours power supply.
Now, due to climate change and the effects of fossil fuels has on health and the environment, many countries are making the gradual move towards renewable energy, such as biomass, wind, and solar. In a bid to keep up with this move, Nigeria has promised zero carbon emission by 2060. According to President Muhammadu Buhari, the government plans to electrify 5 million households and 25 million people using decentralized solar energy solution. This is a major step towards closing our energy access deficit by 2030. This move to establish renewable energy will cost the country more than $400 billion. It begs the question of how the government plans to generate those funds through foreign aid, external debt, or taxation. How well will Nigerians adjust to a new way of life? Can Nigerians' economy handle the transition? And lastly, will it fix Nigeria's energy crisis? Well, Nigeria's grid has an installed capacity of roughly 12,502 megawatts. But due to poor infrastructure, it is only able to deliver around 4,000 megawatts most days. It's a question of sustainability. Make sure you watch the full show on electricity on the next episode of The People with Chujoke Okafor. More to come after the break. Don't go anywhere.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the TrustTV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search TrustTV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
You're welcome back to Business Highlights. I am Chamunda Benga. We're moving on to our last story for today. Yes, we're going to be taking a look at the tech sector in Nigeria. Well, the tech sector currently, the information and communications and technology sector in Nigeria is one of the fastest growing in Nigeria. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the sector contributed 15% of the country's gross domestic product, GDP, second only to agriculture. This continued a trend seen over the last 5 years, with the sector growing at 18% between 2016 and 2019. This growth has placed Nigeria as the largest tech market on the African continent, with a growing number of tech hubs and a growing, vibrant customer base. Well, let's take an excerpt of a young Nosa, a digital artist, talking about the tech sector in Nigeria.
Digital artists, it's anything. Let's look at it like this: the traditional medium of art, right, which contains sculpting, illustrations, maybe pencil work, all of that, right, done digitally. It means you don't have to do it physically. You don't have to bring pencil and paper or take your chisel and wood. Everything is done digitally. That's digital art. So it covers a wide spectrum, from 3D animation and 3D modeling to graphic design. That's like creating flyers and all of that. In the middle, you have video editing, you have motion graphics design. Yeah, so all of that spectrum is digital art. Even if I have to say so myself, but it's very profitable, right? And not just because it's tech. It's everything is always about monopoly and excellence, right? I believe or I think that if you want to make money, it should be in a place where there are not plenty of people that can do what you do, and there are not plenty of people that can do it better than you do, right? Monopoly always drives prices, because some of the things we do are not magic. It's not that hard, but because there are not many people that can do it, and then there are not many people that can do it as well as you can do it, then you can really drive your prices up, basically. Our technological industry is good, right? But the only thing with our tech is that I think it's the wrong market to focus on right now. If as I don't know, as a venture capitalist, if it's somebody that has money that really wants, it's not a startup. A venture capitalist, somebody that really has money that want to throw money into a new sector. I think tech would not be the right, unless it's financial technology, right? We see a lot of persons succeeding there. Kuda, Piggyvest. If it's fintech, it will definitely work because money is a universal goods, right? But the things like social media or I don't know, I'm not sure. It's not as if I'm trying to say that it's not possible, but I'm not sure, right? I think right now we have not gotten to the place where we should be the one pioneering technology, right? We are, as for now, we are adopters. Whatever the West or the Asians they produce, we adopt. Not because we can't produce or I'm shortchanging our ability, saying that Nigerians or Africans cannot be in the forefront of technology. Is that we don't have the enabling environment, right? And it's not the government's fault. It's not that the government cannot create it. It's that, okay, how do we compete with Silicon Valley? Right? Silicon Valley is in the forefront. If anything is happening in technology, it's probably happening in Silicon Valley, right? So how do you create something in Africa that can compete at that level? Right? This is no brain power now. It's not individuals that we're talking about. We are talking about the environment. Even if the government starts putting money into these things, there are other sectors where we feel that things are more pressing, right? Let's think electricity, let's think good roads. Basically, that's what I think about that.
Unfortunately, the growth in Nigeria's tech sector has not translated into jobs for Nigeria's growing youth population. The main reason is a lack of digital skills among the youth population, leading to a low sense of job readiness, despite this being a key pillar in Nigeria's National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy 2020 to 2030. The Global Competitiveness Report places Nigeria 122nd out of 140 countries in terms of digital skills development, despite the need for enhanced digital skills within the Nigerian economy. The tech training infrastructure is not adequate, set up to provide for them. Now, there are formal tech training courses which are provided by universities, other educational institutions, and through traineeship programs, yet it can be difficult for trainers to source training materials, often leaning on Nigerian diaspora abroad to provide these. And of course, you can't forget the high cost of this training. As a result, many turn to informal training methods like going to the internet or, smaller programs. Now, the skill backgrounds built are often ineffective and disjointed. So the sector ends up with trainees who may be experienced in one programming language but do not have the full array of digital skills. The growth of the tech sector boils down to funding. The government of Nigeria and local firms must put in enough investment into supporting the human capital development. You can catch the full interview on Showcase with Nafisa Abdel-Al. Well, we have come to the end of Business Highlights. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms. We are on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look us up at TrustTV News. Once again, my name is Chamun Dabeng, signing out.